Let's continue now to reflect on the life and times of the former finance minister and Reserve Bank governor, Tito Mboweni. Now, author and University of Limpopo communications director, Victor Kgomoeswana, joins us now for more. I mean, your profile is quite huge. I mean, we kept it to author and you're linked to Limpopo University. But
am I that busy about it?
An expert in business in Africa. You are, I mean, the list is endless. Like, I would just implore people to Google you, baby.
Oh, yeah, we do that.
But thank you so much for your time. Now, the late doctor had a very special relationship with the University of Limpopo before he even studied there. In fact, he was born in 1959, exactly 65 years ago, the same year that the university was founded. Yeah. Now, you last saw him about a month ago at the 65th celebration of the Limpopo University, where he gave apparently quite an amazing, incredible lecture or keynote speech. Tell me more about that day.
Right, Master Chaba, good to see you again. And on behalf of the university, the Vice Chancellor and the people of the University of Limpopo, we must add our condolences to the Mboweni family, especially his children. And just say, yes, he's one of the two iconic figures that were born in the same year as the university. It's him and Peter Mokaba. They were born in exactly the same year. But yes, the university was turning 65. And we had a week-long celebration from Monday, the 9th of September to the 16th. And we had different lectures. On each day, there was a main speaker. And on the Wednesday, it was the 10th edition of the Archbishop Thabo Makgoba lecture. We've been doing for 10 years the Archbishop Thabo Makgoba lecture, because he also, the Arch, studied at the university. But he has a partnership as a foundation with the institution. And Tito Mboweni was the speaker on the day, and because you know he was a big advocate of agriculture, of rural livelihoods, and of Limpopo in particular. So we invited him because that's mainly the theme of the Archbishop Thabo Makgoba lecture. That's where we saw him, and we were very honored that he did accommodate us, because as you know, he still was a very busy person, even in his retirement.
Now, before we get to the more serious questions, I think we'd all like to know, what shoes was he wearing?
Good ones. But why are we doing this to the governor? Okay. You know, he was a snappy dress, eh?
Yeah, yes, he was.
But you do know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course.
So, no, he was on point on the day. And we did robe him eventually in our blazer, our special edition of the University of Limpopo 65th anniversary blazer. But no, he was dressed to the nines, and he rose to the occasion, you know, on the day. A mix of humor and wit and sarcasm sometimes, and just being downright cheeky, because he could be when he wanted.
That's wonderful. Now, how do you think that the former governor, Tito Mboweni, made a difference in South Africa's economic landscape?
Just think about it. This man was the deputy head of economic policy in the ANC before 1994, which means he was already seized with what the economy of South Africa could and should look like. And that's why I think we forget. There was a scenario planning group during the early 90s that he was part of. In fact, on the social media, there's a video that he voiced over. And then he became the Minister of Labor. Now, if you remember the history of South Africa, labor was at the heart of the transition, the anti-apartheid struggle. So anybody who was trusted by Nelson Mandela to be Minister of Labor must have been sharp. He was 34 at the time, if I recall, one of the youngest, if not the youngest. And then he built NEDLEC, that we call today, when business, government, and labor come together to forge a policy. And if you look at the stability that exists even in the economy today, even with the strike actions, but the stability and the mutual respect that exists between labor and business, or between business and the unions, you should credit him. But he also went to the Reserve Bank after that. As the governor, he created a lot of infrastructure there, because he had to start all these processes. You talk about inflation targeting. We hate it when interest rates go up. But if you just think about the benefits of having your currency being protected, you will understand. If you look at what's happening in Zimbabwe, where hyperinflation can wipe out overnight the value of the money you've been working all your life to save or to invest. You'll understand. And then, of course, he did a part in business, and post that, we, the people of Limpopo, are very proud that he went now to become the agent, the ambassador of tourism. He's called the Duke of Makgoba's, but it was tongue-in-cheek, except he actually was the Duke, because he put Makgoba's at the center of the South African discourse. And of course, how can we forget? By the way, this is what I like. With all the high levels he has attained all over the world, he was still able to outdo the influencers of influence. The man had 1.5 million Twitter followers. And he wasn't talking always economic policy, although he would talk about it. But he would talk about his cooking or his ranting in the kitchen. I don't know which way you look at it. So I think the legacy is that men who can walk with kings and still have a meal or walk among the ordinary people.
Absolutely. Victor, how do you think his bold policy decisions impacted specific sectors? More, let's talk about the mining and the manufacturing sector, for instance.
Yeah. You know, when you are the ANC, and when we were young in the 80s, we thought the ANC was going to come and give us the dictatorship of the working class. And then the ANC came and said, no, we need mixed policy here, because you still have private sector, you need private capital, you need investors who are doing it for profit to stay in the country. Now, like it or not, it means he brought balance to the economic policy. And when you look at any country in the world that has gone extreme, either extreme left or extreme right, you will know the most sensible solution is to balance the two. And because he was there when the mixed economic policy discussions were happening, and he was there when it was formulated, and he was there to implement it from the Labor Department and from the Reserve Bank point of view, you can say his fingerprint on the landscape, the economic of the country, and of course the continent by extension, will never be removed.
Now, Tito Mboweni introduced the Labor Relations Act in 1995. Now, this completely transformed South Africa's labor landscape, but how did this impact workers' rights?
Okay, before 1994, a worker was a tool. He was, or she was a possession, a commodity of the employer. Labor Relations Act, not just Labor Relations Act, even more important, I think, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, which will now make sure that the rights of workers are protected. If you worked before 1994, you'll understand. You were nothing. People could decide, the employers could decide what to do. Now, to be able to bring workers into the mix and make them partners instead of commodities or entity would be one of the most enduring legacies of man.
And what role would you say the late, great Tito Mboweni played in, particularly when it came to attracting foreign investment to South Africa? Foreign
investors want one thing. You can be as extreme left as you can or extreme right. They just want to know policy certainty is part of your building blocks as a country. And by doing that, by bringing all sides to work together, creating a sense among South Africans that we are all responsible for projecting a stable country, but also protecting the buying power of the currency, means that investors could say, I'm investing in South Africa and I can do projections as to how much my investment will be worth. By the way, even the ability to move in and out of the country. Again, some people will say it wasn't a bad thing, relaxing the foreign exchange regulations. That was part of the policy that I'm sure he was central to.
All right. Now, let's talk a bit more about your perspective on his legacy, because he served this country with absolute distinction. But of all his career highlights, what for you will stand out with regards to the legacy that Tito Mboweni leaves?
Excellence, because he was very impatient, even in a discussion. He didn't like mediocrity. You know, if you took him on in a debate, he was going to take you all the way. So you better bring it in. And I think if you look at the quality of discussion or debate in South Africa sometimes, you weep, because everybody is a commentator, social media. So I think excellence in everything. Bear in mind, this was an A student when he was at school, right? And then he comes in and he brings that into the public sector. When he was at the Reserve Bank, he's known for having been that guy who would go to you and say, Masichaba, you're not dressed like a banker. You know, but it sounds petty. But in fact, if somebody is at the central bank, you want them to look like they are in charge. You want to look. So the excellence to me is the one thing. Transformation, which he started becoming an advocate of, even more, because when he was a government minister, we could have thought, well, you have to do it. But afterwards, and he started talking about true economic emancipation. He started talking about the land bank. He started talking, what is not the land bank, the state bank. It wasn't just about the state. He was saying there are many entrepreneurs who are not given a chance to be able to take their ideas forward because they don't have capital. And he was feeling that the banking system wasn't progressive enough. And he should know, he was the banker of all banks.
All right. So what lessons can be drawn from the former governor's career, more in particular for future economic leaders and policymakers as well?
Keep a cool head. There are popular sentiments coming from all around you, but keep a cool head and pursue the basics relentlessly.
Thank you so much for your time, Victor, and for really just being with us on this very difficult morning where we are laying him to rest, and we appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, that is author and the University of Limpopo Communications Director, Victor Kgomoeswana, very well known throughout the world as an expert in business in Africa.